You may have seen that Nick Cage has a new movie coming out this month with the unbearable weight of massive talent. It seems that with this movie, Nicolas Cage is experiencing a Cage-assance. Not that he was ever really gone. Here, he plays his most enthralling character to date, Nick Cage.
Whoa, Cage!
I had a chance to catch this movie before its release, and I have to say, you don't have to be a Nick Cage fan to be charmed by this movie. It's chock full of numerous references to the king himself, and I definitely have to rewatch it just to catch all of the references. In anticipation for the new film, let's take a deep dive into the national treasure that is Nick and discover some truly bizarre and enthralling facts about the star. Watching the unbearable weight of massive talent is an absolute treat and a dream for all of us Cage heads. With that being said, it's kind of crazy to think that this movie almost never happened. Director Tom Gormican and writer Kevin Etten spent a full year of their lives writing the screenplay before Nicolas signed on. Cage had heard rumblings of a potential movie celebrating his life, and the script received high praise on the blacklist, but the star felt too humble to actually sign on. It was only after the director sent a fan letter to the actor that Cage realized that this film was truly a movie by the fans and for the fans. There's so many great moments in this one that reference his career. I don't want to spoil anything, but keep your eyes peeled for a hilarious Leaving Las Vegas reference. Listen, you don't become a walking meme by following those old styles of acting. What, Stanislavski and Chekhov? Make no mistake, their acting styles were great in the 20th century.
Stanislavski improv thing. Well, you can stop.
Whenever you pop in a Nicolas Cage flick, rest assured knowing that he will be following his patent-pending nouveau shamanic method. Essentially, all this happens to be is avoiding the feeling of faking it. This means the performer goes to great lengths to try and augment one's imagination to mentally become the character. An example of this would happen to be his take on Johnny Blaze. In becoming the Ghost Rider, he would sew Egyptian artifacts into his costume and show up to set with voodoo face paint on to embody the spiritual vibes of the character. On top of having his own acting method, the Rage Cage has over 100 film credits. Looking at his family legacy, this comes as no surprise. The man has talent running down his entire bloodline. His mother Joy happened to be a dancer, and his father August was a film executive. Oh yeah, and his uncle happens to be Francis Ford Coppola, who is a man that needs absolutely no introduction. One would assume that the family ties would make landing roles easier, but that's not the case. When The Godfather Part 3 was in production, the then blossoming actor made his uncle an offer he couldn't refuse. Essentially, he just nicely asked to be in the movie and was immediately shot down. Fans of Fast Times at Ridgemont High might have recognized that in his first credit, he used his birth name, Nicolas Coppola, a stage name that wouldn't last too long. The young Nicolas Coppola found it difficult to audition using his family name, as it proved to be more distracting than anything. I mean, if my uncle had directed multiple works that would be considered the best of all time, I would flex that as much as possible, but my uncle works for an airline, so... Anyways, if there's one thing to know about Nicolas Cage, it's that he's a die-hard fan of comics, and that's going to be a topic that we cover a couple of times in this video. But perhaps the most important comic influence on Nicolas Cage has been the hero for hire, Luke Cage. As a kid, he was fascinated over the adventures of Power Man, and as a way of both hyping himself up and diversifying him from his family tree, he took the Cage mantle and has not looked back since. Considering he based his name off the Power Man, it would be understandable if you thought Luke Cage was his favorite hero, but that title goes to the Man of Steel. Superman has always been Nicolas Cage's comfort character, and his dreams of flight almost became a reality when he was set to star in Tim Burton's Superman. While the movie never actually went a day into filming, there is a lot of behind-the-scenes footage that has made it online, and oh boy, that would have been, an interesting take. This Superman would have let down his luscious locks, giving some serious regeneration suit vibes, which is where the film was to draw a majority of its inspiration from. Fortunately, for all us Cage heads, Teen Titans Go to the Movies granted Nicolas Cage's wish to become the last son of Krypton.
Titans, if you keep playing the fool, you'll never be seen as real heroes, only as jokes.
I'm sure it's every comic book fan's dream to own their favorite character's first appearance in mint condition. Well, when you've got the money Nick Cage has, that's but an auction away. He bought the first appearance of Superman in Action Comics #1 in 1997 for $150,000. 3 years later, it went missing.
I'll never forget you, Ed.
This is a little anticlimactic. I'm sure you were going to expect Nicolas Cage to go all Ben Gates and start a hunt to find it, but that's not the case. Years passed and it remained missing. That is until 2018, when it resurfaced in an abandoned SoCal locker and sold at an auction for a record-breaking $2,161,000. Not a bad investment at all. Okay, so the dude's played the role and owned the most important piece of memorabilia for him. I know what the comments are saying at this point. We get it, he's a fan of Superman. Well, those feats weren't enough for Cage to express his fandom for the character. He actually ended up making Superman his family. Before you ask, no, he didn't have a secret marriage with Henry Cavill. Rather, he named his son Kal-El, based on Clark's name on Krypton. Speaking on the naming choice, he said he wanted something more unusual but beautiful. Then, I remembered the old Superman comics, and Kal-El was his original name on Krypton. So I wanted a name that stood for something good, was unique, and American, and that's all three. In The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, we see a Nicolas Cage that is on the verge of retirement.
You can't quit acting, you can't! Whether you like it or not, you have a gift!
But fear not, movie lovers, our favorite over-actor plans on staying in the industry for as long as we will have him. He recently told Entertainment Weekly that he's healthier when he's working, and then he needs a positive place to express his life experiences, which he finds through acting. Honestly, if Nick somehow finds therapy in playing absurd roles like Red and Mandy, then I say, keep at it, King. From his bombastic performance in Face Off to his enthralling work in Con Air, Nicolas Cage really has been the gift that keeps on giving. No matter how blue you may be, you are but a Cage flick away from a smile on your face. That being said, the actor has given a lot more than just great performances. Forbes has actually listed him amongst the world's most generous celebrities. He's gone on record and said that the last time he had gambled, he put in $200 and won $20,000, which went straight to a local orphanage.
Straight flush to the jack.
His generous actions don't stop there. He's donated $1 million towards Hurricane Katrina victims. He's also donated $2.2 million to Amnesty International, which went to the rehabilitation services for former child soldiers. He even had to donate a two-headed snake to the Audubon Zoo, but that was because of the reptile's ailing health. Side note, what did he name his two-faced snake? Harvey, as in Harvey Dent. Oh gosh, I love this guy. Actors tend to boast during press junkets about how many stunts that they actually did in a movie. Then you watch the film and it's just the back of a stuntman's head doing all the impressive work. Seeing the insane wheelwork behind the driving in Gone in 60 Seconds, it would be easy to credit that work to a stuntman, but give it a closer glance and you will see it's actually Nicolas Cage doing the stunt driving. Nick himself is a gearhead, having owned multiple cars from all of the top brands like Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti, and Rolls-Royce, just to name a few. He might not be a member of Vin's family, but he certainly has a fast and furious edge. He ended up going to 3 separate driving schools to learn how to stunt drive and ended up pulling off most of his driving stunts for Gone in 60 Seconds. Pedro Pascal's hobby boasts quite the impressive Nicolas Cage collection in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but his vaults is merely a footnote of oddities compared to some of the absolutely insane purchases from Nicolas Cage.
I'll give you $20,000 for it.
If his life spending was simplified down to an Amazon receipt, you'd see some pretty weird purchases. This includes a 67-million-year-old Tabosaurus skull, which actually had to be donated back to the museum after he bought it. He has a pyramid tombstone sorted out for whenever he passes. He even has some strange pets, including a shark, crocodile, and octopus. Honestly, you need an entire island to house all of these treasures. Oh, you know what? Yep, Nicolas Cage owns an island, because why not? In 2011, the performer starred in a movie called Trespass. As the title would state, it's about trespassing, and that's actually something he has dealt with in real life. During that film's press junket, he told a story about someone who trespassed into his own home, and somehow it's even more wilder than you'd possibly expect. He woke up one day to the sight of a naked stranger wearing nothing but a leather jacket, just eating a fudgesicle and watching him sleep. To be honest, if this had happened to me, it would take years of therapy to get over, but at this point, it kind of just seems like a normal Tuesday for the actor. This wasn't even the first time he was stalked. The very first time he was stalked was during filming of Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead. Between takes and following the end of day, he noticed he had a silent stalker. That is, a literal mime started following him around. There's not any more additional details about this, but Cage seems to be in pleasant spirits about it.
Are you okay? Never felt better in my life.
Citing that this stalker was silent but deadly. We've already touched on Nicolas's impressive collection of cars, but did you know that at one point he had over 30 different motorcycles as well? Included in his collection is the very same bike that Ghost Rider uses in that film, which is a Yamaha VMAX. When Ghost Rider first released in 2007, fans were pretty shocked at just how ripped Nicolas Cage got for the role. People were so surprised that for a period of time, the internet just assumed that the abs were fake. To clear up any confusion, he did actually work out for the role. However, he also did have some makeup on his skin, but this was actually just to cover up a Ghost Rider tattoo that he has on his arm. Seriously, this man's dedication to comic book characters is incredible. Perhaps Nicolas Cage's most infamous moment of cage rage happens in The Wicker Man, where Nicolas Cage is pleading,
No, not the beast! Not the beast!
I mean, to be fair, if I had a bunch of Barry B. Bensons floating around my head repeatedly asking,
Do you like jazz?
Do you like jazz?
I too would freak out at the extremes Cage did. This moment of absolute absurdity has been criticized online for its schlockiness, but according to Cage, that was fully the intention. He claims to this day that he and the director were fully in on the joke. In fact, Cage reportedly wanted to get even more absurd with this line reading. Even after filming a movie where he literally plays himself, Nicolas Cage still cites working with David Gordon Green on Joe as his most personal movie he's ever made. The script for The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent originally began with Cage wanting to impress Quentin Tarantino, but because he had such a beautiful working relationship with David Gordon Green, the role got swapped and thus birthed the director's cameo in the film. Now, if David Gordon Green wants to repay the favor and cast him in The Righteous Gemstones, I'm sure all of us would be incredibly grateful as we would watch him tear up the scenery of that show. Heck, his cousin Jason Schwartzman has even appeared in that. So if I were to tell you this far in the video, having now heard so many crazy Nicolas Cage anecdotes, that he went full on Ben Gates and lived out his own National Treasure 3 in search of the Holy Grail, would you believe me? Honestly, I wouldn't believe it myself, but no, seriously, like Indiana Jones before him, Nicolas Cage legitimately went on a Holy Grail quest. In his hunt, he just casually started buying impressive property. He had purchased a $15.7 million estate in Rhode Island and 2 castles in Europe, which totaled $12.3 million. So roughly $28 million later, did he find it? No, he didn't. But he did have this to say about his infamous quest. You read a book, and in there's a reference to another book, and then you buy that book, and then you attach the references. For me, it was all about where was the Grail? Was it here? Was it there?
Sir Nicholas, I have been within you this entire time. You, sir, are the Holy Grail. You, sir, are a vampire.
Going on the quest for the Holy Grail is a little sus considering a lot of people genuinely do believe Nicolas Cage is a vampire. This is partly because of his incredible roles, but it's primarily due to this portrait dated back to 1870. Cage claims it isn't him, but this theory doesn't just stop there. There's still a little more information here to stick your teeth into. During the filming for Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, which took place in Transylvania, Nicolas just wasn't connecting with his nouveau shamanic method. He felt like the presence of true evil just wasn't in his soul, and decided to go on a little trip after filming had wrapped for the day. He managed to spend the night at Dracula's castle and woke up restless, telling co-star Idris Elba that he just had to channel the energy, and it was pretty spooky up there. Nicolas Cage became a trailblazer with this idea, as only a few years later, the Bran Castle partnered with Airbnb where a select few could spend the night. Sources say they didn't hear Dracula in the halls, but they did hear the echoes of the eternal Cage. The entire idea of nouveau shamanism is convincing yourself what you're saying or doing is true. So what better way at encapsulating that idea by conducting just a little bit of method acting on set? Remember that scene in A Vampire's Kiss where he ate a live cockroach? Not only did that actually happen, but he himself suggested that idea. Then there's Birdie, where he wanted to force himself through some trauma, so he had a tooth extraction done without Novocaine. Oh yeah, and those bandages he wears in that movie? The man kept those on for 5 weeks straight. Although nothing really trumps what he did on Joe, where he wrestled with a poisonous snake, which in true Cage fashion, said relaxed him? What? With the sheer amount of scripts that crosses his agent's desk, there were bound to be a few roles that got away.
He wrote the screenplay and he wants Nick to star in it.
Throw that in the trash.
He was supposed to play some king with a weird name, Aragorn, for some tiny series of books called Lord of the Rings, but he passed on it. He also turned down the roles of Neo, Shrek, and Willy Wonka, which is actually a role that would go to someone Nicolas Cage made famous. Back in the early 80s, Nicolas Cage was casually playing Monopoly with an aspiring actor buddy of his. His friend was talking about how he wasn't feeling like anything good would come out of Hollywood, but Cage pushed his friend to go ahead and meet with his agent. This meeting granted the actor a role in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, a role which would jump-pad a fruitful career. This man's name, Johnny Depp. After 40 years in Hollywood giving every single role his all, the critics have taken notice into the massive talent Nicolas Cage holds. He's achieved some of the biggest feats one can in Hollywood, like when he won the Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas. But perhaps his biggest accolade came in 2013 when China crowned him as the best global actor. I bet his uncle feels a little bad about not casting him in The Godfather 3 now. Okay, I hear you. After all these facts, you are ready to accept Nicolas Cage as the most eccentric man alive. But how could you possibly give back to the man whose generosity knows no bounds? It turns out there's an entire subreddit dedicated to the king. It's aptly named r/OneTrueGod and has hours of incredible content. It's insane to think massive talent allowed Nick to just go maximum Cage. Nick Cage meeting Nick Cage is the cinematic event of the year. It's even more electrifying than the three Spideys meeting. The movie itself is just laugh out loud hilarious, and you need to see the relationship between Javi and Nick on the big screen when it releases in theaters on April 22nd.